Now that the Philadelphia Eagles are 2-0, and especially after that last game, there's been some criticism regarding their famous tush push play. And now some Eagles players, they call out the criticism regarding that play. And Ben Johnson, head coach of the Chicago Bears, calls out his players. Hold on now. Y'all know we going to talk about it, break it all down, plus a little bit more. But you got to hear the music first.
Welcome to your number one spot for all NFL news and content, NFL Central.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back into another episode of NFL Central, your number one spot for everything NFL. I'm your host here, Bobby, and I'm holding it down on another daily episode. So if you're tuned in, locked in, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. And also follow us on X at NFL Central Show. But hey, let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles to kick the show off. When it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles, they are famously known for the famous brotherly shove, is what they call it. But around the NFL world and in NFL conversations, we call it the tush push. But there's been a lot of criticisms that they've been facing when it comes to procedural things that have not been called regarding that play, ahead of the play or while the play is going on. Somebody pushing Jalen Hurts or the said quarterback into the end zone or across the first line marker. Somebody, most offensive linemen not being called for false starts when it comes to the procedure. And after facing some criticism, we even seen on a Monday night game to where we seen the Los Angeles Chargers take on the Las Vegas Raiders, and officials have to step in and get things lined up properly when it came down to how those teams, or at least the Chargers at that moment, they were lining up and the officials trying to get that correct. So it is on the radar of the NFL. But my question to you all, and I'll go ahead and give me an answer. Do you think this is the last time, the last season that we'll be seeing the tush push? I personally believe that's what it's coming down to, simply because there's so much criticism. Even though I'm not a huge fan of shutting down the play completely, I understand it as long as the evidence is supporting the claims that these offensive linemen are jumping off sides, jumping early, taking off early, and that is giving the Philadelphia Eagles an unfair advantage, and the officials are not making the right calls when it comes to this play. But regarding this play, we had Jordan Mailata, offensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles, call out the tush push criticism, saying this, and quote, "I understand the outrage. What I don't understand is them using it as an excuse to why we won the game. I think it's incredibly disrespectful to our defense and our special teams who balled out. My brothers on defense and special teams who balled out that game, who had our backs when we weren't moving the ball or weren't doing anything." Then he finished off his statement with saying, "I just think it's rubbish. Absolute rubbish, man. It makes my blood boil just thinking about it." Now, hey, it is what it is. It is what it is. The Philadelphia Eagles, they have a right to feel some type of way about it. The Philadelphia Eagles fans have a right to feel something about it. And there's some people around the leagues like, hey, just go out there and stop it, right? That's the beauty of competition. There's always going to be two sides of the competition. Whether you're an Eagles fan or a Giants fan, you're going to say, hey, we want this to go ahead and remain, or there's going to be some people who say, hey, I just don't like the play. I just don't like how it is. I just don't like this X, Y, and Z, whatever it may be. But considering all things that's included, is that this play has been so dominant that it ticks a lot of people off, in my personal opinion. But I can get on the side of the discussion to where there's some people around the NFL or football fans that are just literally saying, hey, y'all, you guys and the officials, your guys are allowing these offensive linemen to pretty much have false starts, but you're not even calling the false start that will push the Eagles back. And then they will actually have to run a different type of play, because you're not going to do a tush push from 5 yards out, from 6 yards out, or whatever the call may be at that particular time. So I understand it to a degree. And I will say that The NFL, when you're constantly hearing all this and you seen that earlier this offseason that there was a vote to completely shut it down, it's closer than what we think. Me personally, I believe that it's closer. I believe that the Philadelphia Eagles are close to having this play banned around the NFL because the criticism from last year, all the votes that came so close to shutting it down this year, and now the criticism that is continuing to fill the airways on national television shows. So the Eagles, I say, look, man, here's a warning for the Philadelphia Eagles. Go get back-to-back championships off this play. I know y'all is not just the end all be all with that said play, but this is literally the most dominant football play in the game right now, and you need to take advantage of it. And the way you, the Philadelphia Eagles, can take advantage of the tush push is simply going back to back before it gets banned, and then you have to go out there and draw up different things, which I still believe that you can execute if you hand the ball off to a Saquon Barkley, or you go ahead and do a QB sneaks with Jalen Hurts. I still believe you can be successful, but I don't know if you're going to be as successful as having the tush push play be there available for you, at least for one down. They are still a really good team. Don't get it misconstrued. The Philadelphia Eagles are still a really good team that can beat a team in multiple ways. But let me know how y'all feeling about that. Let's move on to the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears have a new head coach, have a young quarterback, and they started off the season 0-2 when in reality they could have been 1-1. You know that on that Monday night game versus the Minnesota Vikings, they pretty much choked that game away in the fourth quarter by not completing a deal, not finishing their task, and not doing their damn job. That loss was on all parties involved. Nobody was excluded in that. And then in their matchup versus the Detroit Lions, some of the same things that plagued them on Monday night's loss the previous week to the Minnesota Vikings plagued them in their Detroit Lions loss, to where you seen those guys kind of keep it close, to see where, you know, the penalties start to occur again. You see guys miss on their assignments. You see guys miss tackles. And head coach Ben Johnson had something to say. Ben Johnson called out his players in Chicago, pretty much saying this. I don't know if I can isolate the fact that we're 0-2 to one position. As a football team, we need to execute and play better, and we have to coach and prepare them better. And then Ben Johnson went on to say, we're going to find out this week at practice who wants to practice hard and who wants to be a little bit more involved with the game plan going into Sunday. End quote. That's Ben Johnson. Now, Ben Johnson, we already know. We heard it. We heard about how he's a detail guy. He wants to make sure things are flowing correctly. He wants to hold guys accountable. He wants to create this new football team in his image. And this is what I came to with the conclusion of looking at the Chicago Bears after having higher expectations. It's just going to take time. And I understand that it's not what a lot of fans in Chicago want to hear. It's going to take time. The players that are currently on his team, majority of those players are not his players. Majority of his players fits the picture or the image of the last head coach. You know what I'm saying? And maybe that's something that ticks Ben Johnson off. Maybe there's some things that he saw out there while reviewing film that wasn't good enough. I can tell you that watching some of the film, Braxton Jones, one key cog on his offensive line at left tackle, he got the skin beat off of him during the game versus the Detroit Lions. Totally unacceptable. And then pre-snap penalties, totally unacceptable. So it's good for him to call out these players. It's good to go out there and say, hey, you guys are not performing to the effort or to the level that I seen you guys practice at or play at while we were going through our preseason training camp or whatever it was. So at this particular moment, call their ass out. And that's how it should go. and hold yourself accountable as well, which we have seen Ben Johnson do the first 2 weeks. In the loss versus the Minnesota Vikings, he admitted and told Chicago media, I got too greedy on certain plays. And then in the game versus the Detroit Lions, he took responsibility of them constantly not being focused in on the details to get the job done. So he's held himself accountable. Now you have to hold your players accountable, because those are the guys that are actually playing on the football field. You and your coaching staff, Ben Johnson, you still have to be on your P's and Q's. But also these players have to follow suit. It seems like the stench is still in the building from Matt Eberflus in Chicago, a team that can compete, that will play hard, but once something smacks them or someone quote unquote punches them in the mouth, it seems like this Chicago Bears team fold like lawn chairs. That's what it looks like to me. So it's good that he's calling these players out. And I'm not even going to hold you. This is bringing up a situation in Chicago to where we can see multiple players on the Chicago Bears team hit the trading block. DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and players like that. We can see that if things don't start to turn around in Chicago, especially with veteran players, when you have a bevy of young players that are getting healthy scratches that you selected in this year's draft. Coast and Loveland, not really seeing much tick, not a healthy scratch, but not seeing much tick. Then you talking about a offensive lineman, Ozzie Trapillo, healthy scratch. You're talking about Shamar Turner, healthy scratch. So there can be a number of players that could be on their way out if they don't get their stuff together, if this coaching staff does not feel that they are playing their best style of football. Things could be on a horizon or coming to a change in Chicago to fit Ben Johnson's image. That always happens across the NFL. No one wants to be 0-2, but that's where the Chicago Bears are, and they absolutely have to be better, and they have a huge game of the week matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys, with their former head coach coming to Chicago and Matt Eberflus looking to get himself a victory and look at that old roster and say, see, it wasn't me. It was these whack ass players, or vice versa. The players could say, see, it wasn't me. It was this whack ass coach. It can go either way, regardless if anybody try to downplay matchups. When you go face an old foe, they downplay it all the time. Trust me, as competitors, you want to beat that old team. You want to get the best out of, you know what I'm saying? You want to show your best self versus an old team or an old coach that lets you go, regardless of how they try to play it down. But hey, before we get up out of here, let's talk about some major injury updates around the NFL. First one, Jalen Johnson, Chicago Bears cornerback, placed on IR with a groin injury that could potentially have him out for the remainder of the season. I seen a couple things going on in Chicago media that Jalen Johnson is looking at this as potentially shutting it down for the entire season because he doesn't want to come back and then re-aggravate the injury again, like what just happened, and because he was out all of the offseason. One has made discussion to say, hey, maybe we did rush him back. But nonetheless, we shall see what happens with that. Another injury, Jaden Daniels, quarterback for the Washington Commanders, with a knee injury. MRI revealed that he has a knee sprain and he might be out for a couple weeks with that sprain, which leaves Marcus Mariota to come in and fill the void while Jaden Daniels is down. I believe that hurts the Washington Commanders a lot, me personally, because you already struggled to build that chemistry early in the first two games with Terry McLaurin, which I believe can come on, you know what I'm saying, as time goes on. But Jaden Daniel needs to be out there. That's the problem. He needs to be out there. Another injury is Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has been placed on IR with that turf toe that requires surgery that will keep him out for 3 months, potentially the rest of the season. I chalked it up to the game, not even going to lie to you, and said, hey, Cincinnati Bengals, your season is over. See you next year, Joe Burrow. I could be wrong, but at least for the moment now, I'm saying it's over. And then for the Tampa Bay Bucks, we have Kalijah Cansey, defensive lineman. He tore his pec. He's out for the season. And then Minnesota Vikings have two major injuries that they're dealing with. One with running back Aaron Jones with the hamstring. This is seeming like a yearly occurrence with this type of thing when it comes to Aaron Jones for the last few seasons in those hamstrings. And there's another example right here. He's been placed on IR. And now J.J. McCarthy will be sidelined for a number of weeks with the ankle injury, which will lead to the Minnesota Vikings inserting Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, I'm not even going to hold you. I'm interested to see what he can do. Because I remember very, very clear and vividly that when the Minnesota Vikings lost Kirk Cousins and they went to Joshua Dobbs, the astronaut took off. I ain't gonna lie to you. This is a guy in Carson Wentz who had some success in Philly, who struggled a little bit over the years, but had a solid season in Indy before that last game of the season that cost him the chance at the playoffs. And, he sat around, learned a little bit, and now he's getting the opportunity again to show what he's made of. This is an experienced quarterback with a strong arm. We'll see what happens in Minnesota. But, hey, that is it for me today, y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in into another episode. Before y'all get up out of here, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well, man. We appreciate y'all over here. Make sure you always love football, and y'all already know. I'm going to catch y'all on the next for sure.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.